Good afternoon from London. Weather's not too bad today. We've had a bit of spring. We could do with more. And hello to all dear comrades, friends and supporters from Dr. Dermot Hudson, the chairman of the British group for the study of the Juche Idea, chairman of the Korean Friendship Association of the UK, an official delegate of the Korean Friendship Association for the United Kingdom, president of the Association for the Study of Songun Politics UK, and of course the owner of this channel, Songun 007, the voice of Juche and Songun from the UK on YouTube. Now the light is fading here a bit in London as it's the late afternoon, but I thought I would make this video on an important subject, and the subject is basically bourgeois imperialist propaganda against People's Korea. Particularly the idea that there is, some kind of severe food crisis in People's Korea. And very recently, a good friend and comrade of mine in the US pointed out a video from a supposedly alternative or independent YouTube channel, which bore the title, "North Korea food shortage is serious," quote unquote, and shortage and serious were in block capital letters. And note, by the way, that the channel did not dignify the DPRK with its proper name, the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, or DPRK for short, or People's Korea, or Juche Korea, or Socialist Korea, just North Korea, which is the same way that the mainstream media like to refer to the DPRK. A perusal of the video actually reveals that rather than using their own judgment, the commentator concerned quotes extensively from an article in the Wall Street Journal, a US capitalist newspaper, in fact a very capitalist newspaper, nothing progressive about it at all. Now the issues here are twofold. Firstly, there is an intense propaganda campaign by the imperialist mainstream media over the question of food in the DPRK. Of course, this is not new. In the past few years, the likes of different mainstream media outlets like the BBC have claimed, and I quote, "the DPRK is on the brink of famine," unquote. And they said this in 2020 and 2021, and I think in 2022. I've put links to some of the articles I brought out at the time, or we brought out at the time, to refute this kind of thing. And of course the so-called famine has not happened. And also, just to slightly deviate from my prepared text here, when we visited People's Korea in October 2019, I think there was even talk then of all crop failure, famine, starvation, etc. And we went through a number of farming areas because we visited Mount Moyhang in the north, travelled there by the motorway, and we also visited Kaesong and Panmunjom, again travelling through countryside, and we saw abundant crops being harvested. And it was the same in October 2015 when I was there. I saw quite good crops being harvested with no sign of crop failure. But anyway, the so-called predicted famines have not happened. And secondly, there is the whole sad and sorry issue of why some on the left, in fact a lot of the left, seem very keen to repeat bourgeois, imperialist and mainstream media propaganda against people's career and take a disparaging view of people's career and the Juche Idea. So to address the first issue, as I said, propaganda along the lines of, and I quote, "They are all starving there," is not new. In fact, it goes right back to the 1990s and even before. Back in the 1950s, the Syngmanry puppet fascist regime of South Korea used to claim that everybody in the DPRK was starving and that the population was only 3 million, when in fact the number was about 5 or 6 times greater than that number. And this nonsense continues right to this very day. And of course, if you believed all the accounts of the mainstream media about starvation and famine in the DPRK, there would be no one living in the DPRK, as they would have all starved to death by now, not once, but several times. Common sense should tell you that if there was really mass starvation and famine in the DPRK, then it would have been impossible for the country to have held the successful grand military parade on the 8th of February this year to celebrate the 75th anniversary of the foundation of the Korean People's Army as a regular revolutionary armed force. The DPRK is pushing ahead with the construction of 10,000 new flats in the Hwasong area of Pyongyang, as well as new housing in the Sofo district of Pyongyang, and a new Kangdong greenhouse farm, a giant greenhouse farm. It would be impossible to carry out such massive construction projects if there was mass starvation. You simply wouldn't be able to do it. As you know, getting back to the Wall Street Journal article, the first thing to note is that it's actually written by a South Korean journalist based in Seoul, the capital of the South Korean puppet regime. Many of the reports in the mainstream media are actually copied and pasted from the South Korean puppet media, or written by mainstream media journalists who are based in South Korea. And in fact, physically separated from the DPRK by the demilitarized zone by thousands of US troops, landmines, and also the concrete wall that the South Koreans and US built across the Korean peninsula. So they do not know the reality of people's career and just sit around in bars and coffee shops in Seoul and make up any rubbish about the DPRK. And indeed, there is the old journalistic motto: make it short, make it snappy, and make it up. And you see this applied a lot when it comes to reporting on the DPRK in the mainstream media. So, to briefly address the allegations of the Wall Street Journal article. Firstly, as I've said, it would not be possible for the DPRK to hold big-scale events like the military parade or to carry out large-scale construction projects if everyone was starving. Secondly, the article makes reference to COVID-19, but the impact of COVID-19 on the DPRK was very limited. In fact, the DPRK eliminated COVID-19 within 90 days, a record time, and is free from COVID-19. Secondly, the article refers to natural disasters in the DPRK, But there have not been natural disasters on the scale of those that occurred in the 1990s, which resulted in the arduous March period in the DPRK. Thirdly, the article says that the DPRK has always struggled to feed itself. This is a blatant lie because, in fact, the DPRK became self-sufficient in food from the early 1960s and was exporting over 500,000 tonnes of grain in the 1970s. Lastly, the article refers to the recent 7th plenary meeting of the 8th Central Committee of the Workers' Party of Korea, which was focused on agriculture. So they see this as something abnormal and, somehow indicating something is going wrong with the DPRK's agriculture. Not so. It's not unusual because the Workers' Party of Korea, a people-orientated party, has always focused on agriculture, upholding slogans like "rice is immediately socialism." The plenary meeting was actually called to discuss the full implementation of the programme of rural revolution laid down by respected Marshal Kim Jong-un at the 4th plenary meeting of the 8th Central Committee of the Workers' Party of Korea. Ironically, it is capitalist countries like Britain where there are empty shelves in supermarkets, and I saw a few empty shelves in Lidl the other day, and there's sky-high food prices. Tin of baked beans, are actually £1.40 for Heinz baked beans and about 45 pence for Aldi own brand baked beans. And of course, people of my generation remember how baked beans on toast used to be the staple diet of students and the long-term unemployed in Britain. And of course, you've got many people queuing up at food banks. And I say I've been to the DPRK 18 times, never seen a food bank in the DPRK, never seen anyone begging for food in the DPRK or homeless people on the streets. That's a fact. And secondly, briefly on the subject of why some so-called leftists and alternative types like to parrot the propaganda of the mainstream media against People's Korea. There are diverse reasons for this, and perhaps don't really have time to go in to it all, but I will summarise it. To be fair, the main reason is simply pure ignorance, plain and simple. A complete lack of knowledge and understanding about the massive achievements of Juche-based socialism in People's Korea, an advanced socialist country. And, I think, a lot of people, it's simply because they don't know what the DPRK has achieved. They wrongly see it as a very sort of backward and undeveloped country, which is simply not true. So, when they read this kind of nonsense in the mainstream media, they believe it and repeat it. They might even think they're doing something right by repeating it, but of course they're not. Quite the opposite. They're actually serving capitalism, imperialism and the bourgeoisie and the enemies of People's Korea by doing this. Less charitably, there are those influenced by liberalism and modern revisionism and social democracy, Trotskyism and so on. And some on the left see big countries like Russia and China, and of course Russia is no longer a socialist country. They see Russia and China as the be-all and end-all of everything, and think that socialism can only be built in big countries. Worse still, there are some so-called leftists who secretly support globalisation. They won't say it openly, but they do support globalisation. And some believe that the DPRK should reform and open up. They basically got an anti-Juche, anti-self-reliance agenda. Some believe that you cannot build socialism without outside aid, though of course the DPRK experience proves the opposite to be true. And indeed, the DPRK is to be applauded for rejecting the fake aid of imperialism, the poisoned candy of imperialism. So anyway, I will conclude the video there. I would just like to mention this book, which is actually one of the best-selling of my books, along with The Great Conspiracy Against People's Career. It's a book, a short book, refuting the propaganda about the arduous March period in the DPRK in the 1990s, which there was quite a lot of inaccuracies and distortions about, though not to deny that this was a difficult period. I sort of based my book on what we actually saw when we visited the DPRK in 1996, and also on figures from the World Bank, which actually showed that the DPRK's population increased when, supposedly all these people were meant to be starving to death. So I'll have a link in the description to this book where you can purchase a copy. Anyway, the light is going now. I thank everybody for joining me today and watching this video. If you're not already a subscriber to the channel Songun 007, please subscribe and also like this video. And there is also our affiliated channel, Korean Friendship Association of the UK. And it's also great if you can share content from this channel. I see some people are already sharing content from the channel. That's great. Please do it more. And you can support us in a number of ways. Please come to our real life and online events. We'll be announcing them on Facebook, Twitter and Telegram. And also, as I've alluded to, we have our publications on lulu.com, so please check those out, and if you have spare money, please buy some. They're excellent books to defend the reality of people's career and Juche socialism. So I wish everyone a great day and see you again soon. Goodbye.